Welcome to Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation. Make sure you go to Facebook, look up the Retired Boxers Foundation, Alex Ramos, and Jackie Richardson. Make sure you check them out. Also, we're brought to you by MyBookie.ag. You can go to MyBookie.ag and put in a promo code TGT100 for up to a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $300. Or go to thegruelingtruth.com and click on the banner at the top of the page. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I would like to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
What's up, Mike? Let's get this thing going, man.
Did you recover from our Jerry Lewis telethon show from last night?
Oh man, yeah, I got a couple naps in during the thing, so I feel energized. I'm good, man.
All right. So, of course, we didn't have the music tonight because my dumbass accidentally deleted it instead of pushing play. So, no music tonight. All right, guys, let's go ahead and let's get started. The big news seems to be right now Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua everywhere you turn. Eddie Hearn today invited Deontay Wilder to attend Anthony Joshua's fight on June 1st against Andy Ruiz at Madison Square Garden. Hearn wants to have WBC heavyweight champion Wilder sit down with IBF, WBO, and of course the World British Organization of Boxing, the WBO champion, Anthony Joshua, to try to negotiate a unification fight, hopefully for later this year. However, Hearn isn't sure if Wilder can get the 50-50 split that he's asking for, but he says it's a possibility that AJ might agree to it. Now, I'm pretty sure that AJ doesn't have a say in what happens here, Jeremiah, number one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like this is why you have promoters, so they can do things like this. So, I mean, I like Eddie. I think he gets a little too much flack, but I think he's just kind of being a dumbass here. I mean, again, promoters are there to, discuss and figure out the market value of a guy in a fight and, then front the money and all that other stuff. So I don't know exactly what he's saying. I mean, I suppose he could run the idea by Anthony Joshua, but that'd be an awfully large concession, in my opinion. I don't think there's any doubt, at least for me, that Joshua's clearly the bigger money draw. I get, the American audience or the American market is going to get more money, site fees, yada, yada, yada. But Joshua's the bigger figure. I mean, we talked about the numbers last night. And again, I think that's pretty clear. I mean, Deontay Wilder isn't getting anywhere near, the fans that Anthony Joshua draws in Britain. I mean, he's not getting anywhere close to the live gate. So, yeah, I mean, I don't understand. But maybe he'll throw it by Joshua and they'll laugh it off. I don't know. I just don't see them giving a 50-50 split. And I don't know. Maybe they feel pretty confident in beating him, and maybe they would take that. But it just what doesn't make sense to me, especially in a game like this where you would give him 50-50. But, I mean, so long as they're talking, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, and I think this fight has never been bigger coming off that first-round knockout. And if Joshua was to do something similar within the first 3 rounds against Ruiz, this fight may never be hotter than what it could be right then.
Well, yeah, exactly, because you never know what kind of performances they're going to put on after this. I mean, Deontay Wilder, he might fight Luis Ortiz, and we might get a surprise, and it might end up being tougher than we think. I mean, because again,
I don't think it will. I think Luis Ortiz
I don't think so
is nowhere near what he was before. I think Deontay Wilder would get him out easily.
Well, again, I agree, but what I'm saying is when you're talking about the fight being as hot as it could ever be right now, I'm agreeing with you because you never know what eventually is going to happen.
Yeah.
But then again, Deontay Wilder very well may take the rematch and he might score a spectacular knockout again. I mean, like you said, Luis Ortiz is just not the same fighter that he was. And, it's not the rematch is not really necessary. But like you said, sometimes you got to strike while it's hot. And this seems to be the case. But again, we don't really know. I mean, it's been up and down and hard to predict. So whether it actually happens is, to me, it still seems very much up in the air.
Part of my point on it can never be hotter is because something can happen if you wait. Because this could be even hotter next year at this time if Joshua's destroyed 2 guys quickly, Wilder's destroyed a couple guys real quickly. And I think the perfect thing here is You let Wilder beat up on Ortiz, Joshua beats whoever, Fury beats whoever, and then I still think the perfect scenario is a Fury-Wilder rematch in March or April, and then Joshua Wilder in September.
Yeah, I mean that would
if
actually. If
everything goes the way it should.
Yeah, correct. I mean, and I wouldn't that I could live with. I mean, again, this is still taking way too damn long, and it's just disappointing.
But you know what? I think to get an actual heavyweight champion, all those things have to happen. I mean, you have to have those three guys decided, and with three guys having to decide it, it's not going to be done quickly. The quickest it could be done is if these guys decide to fight September, October, and November, and the winner fights Fury in April or May.
Yeah, I think again, I think you're right. I mean, and I also think you're right that it takes all three of these guys getting it on for us to have a heavyweight champion. Because here's the thing: is this is what's goofy about boxing, right? In no other sport really do you have to deal with this. I know tennis has a little bit different setup, and golf, and some of these other sports where it's you get more quantity, a lot more quantity than you do in something like this, but. So you could have, let's imagine that Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight. Let's imagine they fight this year just for the sake of doing it. I mean, because it doesn't really matter. That's not really my point, how long it may take. But you may have Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight. And Deontay Wilder is ranked number 3 in the heavyweight division. So if Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight, Anthony Joshua wins, Wilder wins, doesn't really matter. One of them has all 4 of the alphabet trinkets, and Fury is left at number 2 because whoever loses is going to be dropped below Fury for sure. Granted, Fury keeps winning. So you won't really have a real heavyweight champion until the winner of that fight.
I don't think no matter what they're ranked, you can't have a heavyweight champion until the 3 of them decide it. I mean, there's just no way. Especially since the majority of people believe that Fury won the first fight with Wilder.
Right, and exactly, and that's my thing about the Laniil claim is, again, I'm a proponent of it. I like the idea. It's got some history, but until these 3 sort it out, the Laniil claim for Fury, the alphabet trinkets with all of these guys, it really doesn't matter. I mean, they have to get it on and fight for themselves so we can know who the man is, and it's just not happening. I mean, if Joshua goes out there and blows Wilder out in a round, so what? I mean, the vast majority of us saw Tyson Fury box Deontay Wilder and beat him pretty clearly. So, again, there's a lot more to do. I mean, that would be a step in the right direction, but I'm hoping it happens sooner rather than later. I mean, again, it's just there's a lot of gossip going around, a lot of fanboys talking about this guy's ducking this guy, that guy's ducking that guy. I honestly don't think so. I think they're just taking the term prize fighter too literally, and they're trying to maximize the revenue.
Well, how about this? Does he get 50-50 if Andy Ruiz comes out and lasts 9 or 10 rounds with Joshua and he doesn't look that good?
I don't think so.
That doesn't change the way this looks? I don't think it does either because I think even if Joshua was to lose the fight, he'd want, 60-40 at least because that's just the way he is on this. All right. And Andy Ruiz is a fat ass. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Joshua coming into this fight because he's going to fight some fat dude that really hasn't accomplished much. He's going to be expected to look like Wilder did against Brazil. And the bad thing there is Andy Ruiz is not going to walk right in and get knocked out. So he's probably not going to look nearly as good as what Wilder did just because of the style matchup.
Yeah, no, I think Andy Ruiz Jr. he's tighter defensively than Joshua. I mean, and Joshua may have to settle for a decision. But I'm like you.
You mean he's tighter than Brazil defensively?
Yeah, what did I say?
You said Joshua.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But yeah, Ruiz is a bit more cautious like that, and especially if you watch the fight, he's probably thinking to himself like, "Hey, I'm not going to do stupid shit like that," or like I'm not going to lead with a left hook on a right-hand puncher. So. Joshua, to me, doesn't really have to rush it. Again, I think regardless of what happens, I really don't think he's losing. But to me, no matter how he wins, unless it's like a Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder kind of thing where most of us think Tyson Fury or Andy Ruiz won, but Joshua gets a decision. Unless something like that happens, I don't really think it changes much. I mean, Joshua just needs to go out there and be himself, so keep Ruiz at a distance and just keep pounding on him. I think he'll be just fine. But if he goes and gets a spectacular knockout, yeah, again, I think they might have to think about getting that done a little bit quicker. But again, who knows, man? It's like Joshua can keep making big bucks regardless. Wilder can keep making decent money regardless. Again, it's hard to. I mean, we've had a number of things happen where we're like, oh, well, maybe it's going to happen, or maybe like when we thought the rematch with Wilder and Fury was going to happen. Well, it hasn't, So, and then we thought, maybe Wilder was going to go to the zone, and it didn't happen. So I don't know. It's a mixed bag, and it's hard to say.
In my defense, I don't remember ever thinking any of that stuff was going to happen, including the first Wilder Fury fight.
Yeah, that's right. You did say that
I
was
wrong
not going to happen
there, but I did say Wilder and Joshua would never fight before 2020, and I'm pretty sure I said that towards the end of 2017. So I think I'm going to be at least close on that one. Let's go ahead and check out the undercard. One of the undercard fights for Pacquiao Thurman on July 20th was announced. Omar Figueroa is going to fight in a WBC welterweight title eliminator, whatever the hell that is, against Omar Figueroa Jr. I just said Omar Figueroa Jr. Yeah. Ugas is going to fight Figueroa in a welterweight title eliminator. I think this is great news for Ugas because maybe he can get a shot at earning another title shot. He fought very well against Sean Porter. Close fight. And I think a lot of people, or at least some people, thought he did enough to win there, Jeremiah. So I think this is a good matchup.
Yeah, I'm not so happy about Ugas's part. I'm actually happy that Omar Figueroa is in this because I think he's going to get his butt whipped. That's one thing that makes me a bit.
Weight.
Yeah, right. That's what. Well, I think Ugas beats him regardless. If Figueroa could come in at 165, it wouldn't really matter. I think because watching him at 135, he was big there. He was a bit more effective, but at 147, he's out of his depth. And against a guy like Ugas, who's obviously a pretty good boxer, can fight well inside, outside. Not an elite level guy, not somebody who does anything but great, but a guy who does just about everything pretty good. But that's what I'm most excited about because I don't like Omar Figueroa. It's not as if I hate his personality or hate him as a person or any of that stuff. He's a bit like Billy Joe Saunders, who we talked about last night. He just doesn't seem like a guy who's dedicated to his craft. He's had bouts of inactivity. His defense is bad. He relies on his work rate and his size. And again, at 135, you can get by with that sort of stuff. But at 147, he watched his fight against Antonio DeMarco, who was way past his best. He got hurt late in the fight. It was a close one. To me, that just signals that his career is about over, and not necessarily over as he's going to retire, but over as a top-level guy. Because at 147, he's got – I don't like to speak in absolutes because this is a game where a whole lot of weird stuff can happen, and I'm not discounting Figueroa's shot altogether against Ugas, but I'm almost absolutely sure that he beats nobody in the top 5 at welterweight. I wouldn't favor him against anybody in the top 15, maybe not anybody in the top 20. He's just not that good at 147. He takes too many shots. And again, that's what
I thought he lost to Molina.
Well, I thought he lost to Jerry Belmonte's Jr. Hold on, is he a junior? That was the first sign to me. If you watched his career at 135, he got outboxed. I mean, it was a close fight, and again, that's a little fuzzy because I haven't seen it, and that's not one of those fights you go back and look at again. But I remember Jerry Belmonte's given him all sorts of problems with his moving and boxing and sticking behind the jab. That to me was a red flag and showed me that eventually he was going to lose. And so here it to me it's the end of the line for any title hopes at all for Omar Figueroa. But Ugas is going to get the job done. He's going to get a decision. Figueroa, I think, is tough enough to, reach the finish line. But Ugas, to me, clearly has this one.
All right, also on the undercard, this is actually a decent undercard, Jeremiah. Sergey Lipinets versus John Molina Jr. And I think this is going to be a tough fight for Molina because, Lipinets is a little younger and he can crack a little bit, but this is another solid matchup.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean,
For pay-per-view undercards, this is Ali Frazier.
yeah, no, this is. I mean, overall, this is better than what we're typically getting. But
Yeah, there's two at
Molina.
least mildly interesting fights underneath the main event. And the main event, I think, is a good matchup.
Yeah, and I was hoping to see. Uh, I was hoping to see Lipinets in with somebody more interesting. I was hoping he would get somebody like Danny Garcia, actually. Because he moved up to 147. It seems like he's there to stay. Molina is a good fighter. Part of me isn't that mad because really John Molina's put in some tough years. He's really been a guy who's provided a lot of excitement. He's tough. He's had a big punch. He's scored some upsets. I mean, you remember his fight with Mickey Bay, who was outboxing him, damn near shutting him out the whole time. And then he cracks Bay and stops him in the last round. Molina's a good fighter. I like him. He was in fun with Ivan Redkach not long ago. Again, I like the guy. I really do, and I that is a guy I want to see be pretty well off by the time he retires. But Lipinets I think is just much too much at especially in terms of size. I mean, Molina's not a small guy, but at 147 I think he's a little past that. He's obviously past his prime. Lipinets I think is going to give him a good shellacking, and I think he's going to stop him pretty early on.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on to another fight that was solidified a couple days ago. And this is a fight me, you, and John talked about, I think, a week or two ago. Adam Kownacki against Chris Arreola. That will be a fight until Arreola gets tired, passes out, and then screams profanities into the camera.
Yeah, and talks about well, he starts crying and talks about how he gave his best, yada yada yada. I don't know, man. It's to me, Ariola's pretty overmatched here. I mean, he's way past his best. He's a fun guy, but anybody who has good boxing ability, and I'm talking relative to the heavyweight division because I saw Fred Cassie beat him, and Cassie is certainly not a world-class operator. I think Kownacki's going to give him a good beating. It might be fun a little bit for maybe the first two rounds, but I think if Kownacki goes in there like he has against Charles Martin and Artur Spilka, I think he's going to blast Arreola out of there in a round or two. But there is some similarities there. I mean, I actually think that Kownacki fights a bit like Chris Arreola did at his best. I mean, I think he's better. I never thought
Chris Arreola wasn't a bad fighter at his best, though.
No, he wasn't. But stylistically, there's a lot of similarity there. I think Kownacki will turn out to be a little bit better. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, Chris Arreola got 3 cracks at a trinket. That means garbage to me.
Who doesn't?
Because, well,
Dominic Brazil's had 2.
Yeah.
Chris
right.
Arreola would probably beat Dominic Brazil right now.
And that's the thing about it that gets me is when people are like, oh, well, he's a 3-time title challenger. Yeah, he is because he's a Mexican and the WBC want him to be. It's not, again, it's not because he's getting there based on merit. I mean, you think he was really the top dog when Vitali beat the crap out of him? No. Again, he's getting, was he anywhere near the top 10 when Deontay Wilder beat him up? Nah. I mean, come on. It's favoritism. That's all it is. He's really not. In my opinion, he's never been worthy of those alphabet shots
scary
ever.
Thing. What happens if he catches Kownacki and knocks him out, and then we get to see Wilder and Arreola again?
God, I would love a rematch. That would be
awesome.
Oh God, that would be so good. Nah, man. To me, I think so. No long as Kownacki just goes in there and gets it like he did against Spilka, I think he's going to get him out of there pretty early.
All right, you're supposed to put a period at the end of your sentences. Let's see. What else we got here? I know there was something else I wanted to talk. Well, not necessarily wanted to talk about, but Bredis Glowacki. I think this is a good matchup. World Boxing Super Series. What's your take on this fight?
Yeah, I actually think it's gotten a bit more interesting because Bredis, I thought, and from what I saw, most people believed that Bredis lost his last fight against Gavor. I believe Gavor is the brother of who is it, Noel Gavor? Or maybe I'm mistaken there, and if I am, go ahead and correct me. Um, but yeah, I think he's the brother. The Armenian guy who fights out of Germany. God, I swear he's got to be the brother of the guy Arthur Abraham, not Cold. Anyways, most of us saw Bredis lose to the guy, and I think
you talking about the quarterfinal match?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that wasn't that dude's last name like McKellen or something?
No. I'm pretty sure that was no, because
Yeah,
Vlasov.
because I'm looking at it right now and it says Noel McKellen, who was 23-2. It was a controversial 12-round unanimous decision.
Okay, there you go. I'm obviously getting my names mixed up, but yeah, I think like Gavor. That's probably where I'm mixing it up. But I think like Gavor, he's an Armenian who fights out of Germany.
Yeah,
But
nice save, Jeremiah. Go ahead.
yeah. Anyways, I watched the fight. Okay,
Anyway, I think you'd be the best player or best boxer pound for pound in the whole world. But go ahead.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
It was a play on words.
Yeah. So yeah. Again, I watched the fight, so that's all that matters. Anyways, most of us thought that Bredis lost that. And I think it kind of throws a wrench into things because Glowacki is kind of viewed as being a little past his best. After Usyk beat him up pretty good, boxed him. It's not as if he was pummeling him or anything, but he outboxed him clearly, landed a bunch of shots in that. Glowacki just seems like he's a little past his best. And now that Bredis is struggling with guys that we assume that he probably wouldn't. I mean, he was viewed by most people as a lock for the finals here. But now with Glowacki, who's a good fighter, good southpaw, he's got a punch. Bredis is a bit more upright, but he can crack a little bit too. I think it's an interesting styles fight, and I actually don't know who I'm going to pick here. Initially, I would have been like most people, and I would have favored Bredis. Maybe his work rate, he's pretty good all around, but I don't know. That's a tough contest. I mean, we didn't really need to see a second go round for the cruiserweights anyways, but I mean, it's not a bad fight. I mean, these guys are like top 10 kind of guys. So, I mean, at least we're getting something like that. That is some quality, but I don't know who's going to win there.
All right. You want to go ahead and get on this day? Is there something else you want to talk about?
No, I browsed the news and I didn't really see anything interesting. I mean, there was talk of it wasn't really that interesting. Anyway, we'll just go on this day because I think that's a bit more fun to talk about. Anyways, a lot of these older topics are just a bit more fun.
They're always more fun to talk about than the rest of this shit.
Yeah, but anyways, on this day, I was going to go with Benitez Hope, but my guess is it looked like you guys probably talked about that on the Sheridan report today.
Yeah, we talked about the on this day with Wilfred Benitez, because I know a lot about guys in the 70s and the 80s.
Yes, sir. But
old.
Yeah, but this goes a little back.
Don't agree with me. Go ahead.
Well, this goes back a little bit before your time, but it's Joe Louis winning a disqualification 7 against Buddy Bear, Max Bear's brother. And okay, so I watched this fight before we came on the show, and it's been a little while since I saw it because I actually had planned and I never finished it. But I was going to watch Joe Louis's career from front to back, and I got a couple fights in.
Oh, dude, you don't watch it on what you got. I got like mint copies, the original films of like 15 to 20 of his fights. They're all perfect too.
Well, and I was under the impression that there used to be more original ones on the internet because you've seen that YouTube channel?
Yeah, they were mine. I took them down because they demonetized my channel.
Assholes.
I don't know if it was because of that or my take on transgender athletes, but it seemed that right after I wrote the thing about the transgender athletes, they demonetized me. Or I said something about transgender athletes, and they said that I was against community Facebook standards. Well, fuck you, Facebook, and fucking YouTube, and all you fuckers.
Pieces of shit.
Well, the thing about Buddy Bear that I found interesting was his last 2 fights were the 2 fights against Lewis. So he wasn't a guy that hung around overly long because I think his career was like less than 10 years. And he had some solid wins because I think he stopped Tony Galento. He beat Nathan Mann, who was a good fighter. Lisa Vold was a good heavyweight. So he wasn't a bad fighter. But the thing that was interesting when you brought this fight up, is I've got the film, and I never realized it was a DQ because my film's silent. I think it's got crowd noise, and I don't know. Did you have crowd? What did you have? Did you hear the bell, the actual bell, go off at the end of that round when you watched the fight?
Well, to be honest with you, it was a bit confusing because I don't know if it was the audio itself, but you could tell that there was issues beforehand because even in the first round, the referee calls a halt to the round like 5 seconds before the actual bell rings, and then you do hear the bell, but it was all confusing to me because I was watching the fight and Joe Louis is putting a whooping on him. And then, the corner comes out and protests and, they get disqualified. But yeah, I was confused watching it, to be honest with you. But again, it's not my first time watching the fight. But yeah, I was confused. I was like, well, what's going on? It looks like he got knocked out. The ref waves it off after, what looks like a verbal scuffle between himself and the corner. But yeah, it was confusing. I'm not sure if I heard the last bell of, the last round.
I can't remember either. It doesn't seem that it stuck out to me. The most interesting story about this whole fight, though, was referee Arthur Donovan. I guess the story was it had rained the day of the fight, and most people thought the bout was going to be postponed by promoter Mike Jacobs. And ordinarily they would have, but the Washington Senators baseball team was coming back to town, and Griffith Stadium wasn't going to be available for the next few days. So Jacobs just waited and hoped that the weather cleared up, and it did. Now, Joe Louis's biographer, Chris Mead, wrote in Louis's biography that Arthur Donovan assumed it was off, so he went to a bar and got drunk. And I think that nowadays it's usually the judges that go get drunk before the fight. But
yeah, with the promoters too. The
yeah,
promoters are buying them rounds.
Yeah, they're chilling with Oscar. But when he learned that the bout would go on, Donovan tried desperately to sober up for the fight. So what it calls into play here is if this dude is a little bit drunk, maybe his judgment wasn't the best either.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd never heard that story before, but yeah, that could be it. He was just at a bar and they pulled him and threw him in a cold bath or something. That'd be reminiscing of something
maybe
they
he just drank a bunch of coffee. Maybe he just let the fight end because he had to piss so bad because of all the coffee. I don't know. And Louis dropped him at the end of that round. And what was interesting to me is his manager was Ansel Hoffman and his trainer was Ray Arcel. And they argued that Louis should be disqualified for hitting Bear after the bell. And when they refused to leave the ring, Donovan then disqualified Bear.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, the DQ thing, maybe he was drunk and he was like, well, I didn't hear anything. I don't know. But when I was watching that fight, Bear was getting his ass whooped. And
I would guess this. Overall, I would think what would happen was they knew they weren't going to win, and the punch was borderline, so they figured out, what the hell, we'll take a shot and see if we can pull him on Tell Griffith off.
Yeah, maybe, right? I mean, that after all, we're talking about Ray Arcel, the guy. I mean, that guy had been hanging out with fighters like Benny Leonard and stuff, so he probably,
was a smart dude.
Yeah, he knew a thing or two. I mean, this guy was training he was hanging out with Benny Leonard, and then he was also training like Roberto Duran. I mean, this is a guy with.
Here you go. How about this? From looking this up, just for the hell of it, I looked up how much they were paid. Louis was paid $47,000 for the fight, and Bear made $4,000.
What would that be? What would that be in today's money? Got an inflation calculator?
No,
that would
not on me. I don't. But and then the thing that was interesting to me also from looking at these two fights and the betting lines and how much they made and everything is actually I got that mixed up. That was the second fight Bear made $4,000. But since he got knocked out in the first round, that's pretty good money for like a minute and a half's work or 2 minutes and 56 seconds of work. But Louis in the first fight was a 10-1 favorite. He was only a 6-1 betting favorite in the second fight, even though he dominated the first fight. I would think maybe the reason the odds had dropped is because Bear had knocked Louis down in the first fight, but it seems weird to me after watching the first fight that the second fight would have closer odds.
Yeah, you would think that a guy like Joe Louis, with his reputation, he would be even better in the rematch. And not only that, Buddy Bear had actually taken. It's funny, you look at the time, like you noted already. Buddy Bear fought Joe Louis as his last two fights, and nowadays, I mean, there was a difference of what was it? There was a well, yeah. You look at Joe Louis himself, and he fought Billy Conn and Lou Nova in between that. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's fighting May 23rd, and he's not even fighting a month later. He's fighting Billy Conn. I mean, so Buddy Bear's layoff was considered, sort of significant at that time. Which is kind of interesting. And so I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they saw Billy Conn have some success, but then again, Buddy Bear and Billy Conn are almost completely different stylistically. But
well, that and the fact that Billy Conn was a great fighter and Buddy Bear wasn't.
yeah, exactly. Well, I do have to know too that Buddy Bear is from Denver, Colorado, my hometown. So he's one of the better guys to ever do it. It's not a real big boxing community here. I mean, when I watched the fight, Buddy Bear, he had a good first round. I mean, he was big, right? I mean, he's a pretty good size heavyweight by modern standards, but he didn't really fight that well big. Actually, I've seen the Primo Carnera fight, and Carnera I thought was a superior operator in terms of keeping the distance. I mean, he did work his jab consistently, but Buddy Bear didn't. He kept trying to. I mean, it was almost smart what he was doing in the first round. He kept going after Joe Louis, and then he would lay on him, and you could see that he was trying to use his physical strength to sap Joe Louis and maybe taking him into deep water and bang him out. But even for a big guy, he was throwing a lot of punches on the inside. He was trying to work the uppercuts, and he did a pretty good job in the first round, and the knockdown itself wasn't half bad. I mean, he threw a right hand, and then he followed it up with a kind of sneaky left hook, and it really cracked Joe Louis. I mean, Joe Louis fell through the ropes and had to get up, and he was on the other side of the apron, and he had to, get himself back into the ring. And of course, in those times, once you got in the ring, it was pretty much go time. It wasn't, they're evaluating you, looking in your eyes, grabbing your gloves. The ref. I can't even remember if he touched Joe Louis, but he was just like, all right, let's keep getting it on. But, Louis fought back admirably. I mean, before the round ended, I mean, he was already back in the fight. And I was really impressed with Joe Louis. I mean, this is why I say all the time that, if you really want to know how good a guy is, go watch the film. He did a lot of really impressive stuff. And, I mean, like – he does stuff that I don't see any heavyweight do anymore. Like I remember I think it was the first round or maybe it was the third round.
Did he throw a 3-punch combination, Jeremiah?
He did throw combinations.
There
That's
impressive. That's something nobody does now anyways, is it?
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. Well, what he was doing that I don't see very many guys do at all anymore is what he would do is Buddy Bear would throw a jab, and then Louis would parry it, and immediately he would come back with a 1-2 or just a 2. I mean, he was also parrying jabs and throwing left hooks. I mean, just his hand play was really, really good. And, when it got down to the nitty-gritty and it was time to finish Buddy Bear, it's like he could mix his right hands up well, too, where, like, Deontay Wilder, he's got almost the one speed, but, Louis sometimes he would chop the right hand. Sometimes he would get his body behind it. He was great, a great infighter. He was extremely accurate, but it was really cool to see him, like how diverse his attack was, because Buddy Bear was putting up that big shoulder. And so, Louis would just throw this chopping right hand inside of it and connect on his face. And I mean, just watching the guy finish, I mean, there's a good reason why he's considered one of the best finishers to ever grace a sport. I mean, once he had you hurt, he didn't let you off the hook. And it was the same thing with Bear here. I mean, when he knocked Bear down the first time, it was comical. It was almost something you would see in a cartoon. He punched him and he spun around like a top and then hit the canvas. And then the second knockdown wasn't quite as vicious.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think Joe Louis hit harder than Deontay Wilder. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of historians who would probably agree with you.
I think there's no doubt because Lou Nova. You ever see the Lou Nova fight?
I think so. I don't know. That one's kind of fuzzy to me.
I don't even know if that film exists because I may have it. I've seen the knockout on a clip somewhere, I think. But that was a fight that Lewis dominated for 6 rounds. He knocked Nova out with one of the hardest right hands you're ever going to see. And this was, I think, in 41. It was between the Baron Khan fight, I think. And the thing that was interesting to me is Ray Arcel, who was Nova's manager, I think it was Ray Carlin. So I think Ray Carlin was the manager. Arcel was the trainer. They got suspended by the New York State Athletic Commission after that fight, like a couple months after the fight. And they basically got suspended. Now listen to this, because see if this would ever happen nowadays, because Tyson Fury's trainers would always be suspended. But they got suspended, or Arcel got suspended, for instructing the challenger to hold back early and box a defensive battle against Lewis. And Carlin, who was the manager, was suspended for 6 months. Arcel's got suspended for 2 months. And they were also reprimanded for refusing to heed the referee's warning to stop using grease on Nova. And that got them suspended for 6 months and 2 months. For fighting a defensive fight, they were suspended. And the thing about that fight is, I don't think that fight exists in its entirety. And I think the reason it doesn't was the distributors, at the day after the fight, when they viewed the film, decided it was too boring to show in theaters.
Wow, what a time, huh?
I'm going to look on YouTube and see if I can find it, because I think that is one of the Lewis title defenses that I'm missing. Hold on here. But if they did that, and they didn't use the tape, it was part of the film, it's possible that it did get destroyed.
Yeah, that would be awfully funny that they would destroy a piece of history just for that. They're like,
well, I mean, look, Super Bowl I and Super Bowl II don't exist. There's a lot of Bobby Thompson's home run doesn't exist. That was televised in New York. But a lot of times what they would do with these films, and yeah, I don't see anything on Lou Nova and Joe Louis. So I think that's a fight that doesn't exist. I have seen the punch, a picture of the punch hitting the dude, and he cracked him pretty good. And everything I read, it was one of the hardest punches anybody's ever been hit with. But yeah, because what they would do was, say like Super Bowl II, the Raiders and the Packers, they would break that down into highlights, and then they would just tape over it because they were using reel-to-reel film or U-matic. The stuff was expensive, and news recordings you can find all the way back because that was considered historical. But the sporting events at the time were not considered historical. I mean, you look even back to the early 70s. There's games that you can't find that nobody has. Because I got about everything anybody could have. And there's like the Christmas Day 1971 playoff game, double overtime between the Dolphins and the Cardinals. Or Dolphins and the Chiefs. I made a joke like the Cardinals had ever been in the playoffs. And... And that game doesn't exist because once they spliced their 2 or 3 minutes of highlights out, they just got rid of it. So the only thing that exists is what NFL film shot off of it, which isn't the original broadcast. So it's the same thing when you watch the old Joe Louis films. What they would do was they would cut each round down by 30 seconds or a minute, make each round 2 minutes or 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So there's really very few fights back in that day that you can get complete.
Well, yeah, and obviously it's, now looking back on it, it's a big problem because, I mean, hell, you look at a guy like Maxie Rosenblum who had like 200 plus fights, and you're like, where's the footage, right? I mean, we're talking about Ray Robinson, and there's only bits and pieces of him in his prime. I mean, there's nothing of him.
I've only seen one complete fight, and that's against Ralph Tiger Jones, which was him at welterweight.
No, he fought Ralph at 160.
Did he? Okay, then that's not that. I'm pretty sure I got a film. Either that or the guy suckered me when he said, hey, this is a welterweight fight. Because I didn't even watch it yet, because I got like a million boxing films I haven't watched yet. And Daniel Cisneros, if you're listening, we will make a trade. I just remembered that I told him 2 weeks ago he was on the show, and then I talked to him for a half hour the next day, and I forgot completely about it. So,
Yeah, it
uh,
happens. We're all over the place, man. Talking. Anyways, yeah, but it's just unfortunate because now a guy like Harry Greb has become this big mystical figure because of it. I mean, we just have to deal with him playing around with a Philadelphia
yeah, I'll
50-year-old.
guarantee you there's film somewhere, either in somebody's attic or somebody's just holding on to it and not messing with it because I've been told this stuff before about multiple games and fights. This doesn't exist, and then a few years later it does. Or somebody will put out like the first half of an NFL game, and then they'll act like that's all that's there, and then 10 years later they'll sell the second half.
Yeah, well, and again, we know how it is with these boxing film collectors. I mean, I know a guy who has these things in his collection, and I've seen on the forums people are like, hey, well, why don't you release it to the public? Well, because it loses its value. It's like once you stick it on YouTube, what are you going to get out of it? Nothing, because it's easy to recreate and duplicate. And I mean, I could download that thing in 5 minutes. So what does it matter?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, because not long ago there was thought to no Sam Langford film was thought to exist, and then all of a sudden we got him against Bill. Ah, damn it, I can't remember him.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about because I
Parts
watched
of it.
it. I think there's a couple fights out there with him now, isn't there?
Yeah, I know. I think there's film with Jeanette, or maybe it's McVeigh. I think there's film with the Bill, the big white heavyweight, and
Bill
I know there's
Bredis?
a no. I know there's at least two. But yeah, anyways, that's how it works. I mean, I know some of these guys have film, and they're just not releasing it to the public because again, these are treasures for them. And I do understand it a little bit. I mean, if you've got something like if somebody had a Harry Greb film, especially the Mickey Walker one, which did exist at some point, um, I mean, what would that be worth today? I mean, because the call to find something is reached a point where we're like, okay, well, let's finally get this out here and let everybody see it. But you
Well,
never
how about
know.
this? Super Bowl one, and this was the same way. The 1960 World Series, Bill Mazeroski's seventh game home run, that was thought to not exist. And I forget, it was somebody in Hollywood. I know it was somebody famous too, but I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember who it was. But they had done, I think, a kinescope recording of it, and it had been locked away in their attic for decades. And then when they passed away and their kids went in and went through all their stuff, they found it was either U-matic or kinescope recording that, on the film it said 1960 World Series Game 7. They put it in, or they went ahead and they had the film converted and found out that it actually was the complete broadcast of the 1960 Game 7 World Series. Another one was there was some people that after parents passed away found Super Bowl one, which had been filmed. I think I think it was Kinescope. It's missing like part of the second quarter or something. And the sad thing there is these people wanted to release it. They wanted to sell it to the NFL. And the NFL won't buy it because they say they own the rights to it. So now these people are screwed. They can't sell it or the NFL will sue them. And it's really a joke. I think the dude's name, if I remember right, was like Troy Hopt. Because I tried to get him on one of our shows. This happened like in 2016. And he has the only known recording of this game. And the sad thing about that is, number one, it's Super Bowl one. CBS and NBC both did this game because NBC was with the AFL, CBS was with the NFL, and they've never been able to resolve this. I mean, it's been a divide since they found it in 2005, and the tapes are in storage, and I think up in upstate New York, and this guy can't do anything with it, and they basically sat ignored in the attic at a family's 3-bedroom house that I guess, whatever you call it, his father had taped the game. Now, Haupt never even knew his father because his father died before he was born, they didn't know these tapes existed, and then they found a pair of 2-inch Scotch tapes, which I think were U-matic, and it had most of the game. It was either U-matic or a quadruplex taping machine. Those were the only two taping machines they had at that point. Yeah, I used to trade a lot of this stuff. So I got my wife's nuts because I got like still probably 15,000 videotapes in the garage and 40,000 DVDs converted from it. And they found it though, and they called CBS and NBC and see if they wanted it, and they called the NFL, and the NFL basically will not let it be shown. They will not pay one dime for it because they said they own it. The NFL doesn't even have Super Bowl I.
Wow. Yeah, and as much money as they throw at players as much money as they throw on advertising every year and all that other crap, I don't know, man. I'm probably with you. I think they should bargain with a guy and just get it out there, make it available to people. I mean, that's a piece of history. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, some people are like that. I mean, so is he not allowed to convert it to DVD or?
It has been converted because it has sat in an attic and it's slowly deteriorated. They did get it fixed. I think it's why part of the game is missing. I think there's like 10 minutes missing out of the game time, not just 10 minutes. And at one point, CBS had a plan to interview him on a Super Bowl pregame segment, pay him $25,000 and give him 2 tickets to the Super Bowl, and the NFL came in and said that you're not going to do that. The NFL ordered the CBS not to pay him. So this is a game that people could actually see, but they can't because the NFL is denying it, and they're dying to pay this guy. And, I mean, you can make the first Super Bowl come back to life. People could see how it was, but instead the NFL is so caught up in being self-important that they just destroy this shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, wouldn't that be crazy if this guy was like, forget you guys and just start smashing it, just eliminated it? That'd be awful, wouldn't it? I mean, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, and the thing is that there's a lot of that going around. I mean, there's all sorts of, I mean, hell, you know, my wife's dad is, you know, like sometimes he watches those pick'em shows where they go into barns and people's houses and they just start like, hey, can I have this? Can I have this? And I'll bargain with you. And some people want to let it go. Some people
This is what he offered. He offered the league in 2016 to sell the tapes jointly between him and the league and donate 50% of the proceeds to the favorite charity of the NFL's choice. And they still wouldn't do it.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but they obviously feel that it's theirs, and I don't know. I mean, it sucks. It sucks because I'm one of those guys. I mean, it sucks growing up in the internet era because a lot of us this has become free. You know, it's again.
I haven't traded fights or games with anybody in a long time because most of the stuff you can find. Now, the NFL stuff I just don't trade because I think I've pretty much got everything I could have. And a lot of times YouTube will take the NFL stuff down. But if you want to see boxing, I mean, you could go on there and see damn near everything that's available. Not all of it. There's a lot of stuff you still can't find on there. But the majority of stuff you want to see, especially the more recent stuff, 1970 to now, you can find on there.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's hard to say what exactly, we have that isn't being put out of there. I mean, I do imagine that a lot of stuff is still either not found or being, kind of buried a little bit because I know, Steve Compton, the guy who wrote the 700-page Harry Greb book, which is excellent. Every once in a while on his Facebook page, he's talking about how he's got this and he's got that. And, he's obviously not releasing the film to the public. And like he'll show still photos of the film, so it's actually, it's a tangible thing. But, I mean, I just know that as somebody like that is, has got a number of things that the public isn't witnessing. So it would be really nice to see all that. Again, growing up in the internet era, it's tough to with YouTube and everything, it's not that I'm opposed to paying for things. I'm not at all. I mean, that's kind of the way the market works. I mean, nobody really seems to care to pay for, Netflix and Hulu and all that other stuff. But when it comes to YouTube and it's on there, it's like, hey, I want to see it. Again, like I'm with a lot of these historians. I want to see some Harry Greb or, Jack Britton or, like a good number of these guys where virtually little seems to be available. But it just is what it is. I mean, there's not much you can do. I wouldn't even know who you go in strong arm. Maybe ESPN. Apparently, they've got a lot of film in the vault there.
Well, I think Steve Lott, those guys, Big Fights, had about everything that could be had. I don't know if they were holding that out. I wouldn't think they would since they put everything else out. But I guarantee you somewhere it's there. All we need is the guy that owns it to die, and his kids will find it and sell it to the highest bidder, and then we can see it.
Yeah, they're like, who the hell is Harry Greb?
Yeah, who's Harry Greb? I don't know, but he's not as great as Deontay Wilder. Because Deontay Wilder knocked Dominic Breazeale out with a brutal punch in one round.
Yep.
He slept him. He folded him. What are the other words for it? He slept him, he folded him. I don't know. What are some of the other words you young kids use to talk about knocking somebody out?
I don't know, man. I mean, I know I say, he starched him. I don't know, cold cocked him. I don't really say that, but
he cold cocked him. That sounds like a fight you'd see on Pornhub.
Yeah, that's where I got that. That's where I got the. That's where I got the idea, actually.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Stormy Daniels fighting Donald Trump, or nah?
Dude, I've seen Stormy Daniels' titties. I'm not into it, man.
No, she's a little nasty and saggy.
Yeah.
She'd fit in with that Sports Illustrated issue with the fat chicks and.
The new one. Yeah, I like their new business model. I could honestly give a shit about Sports Illustrated. I mean, they're going with that like woke model where they're putting chubby chicks on there and chicks in head scarves and
that could drive a 12-year-old boy that just wants a little alone time with the magazine. That could turn him gay.
Yeah, we got to be careful with that stuff.
I know. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because I'm just as woke as the next guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not. But still, I mean.
No, I'm with you, man.
I'm not even sure what woke means. That's something you teenagers talk about.
No, it's just, it's one of the, we got to be inclusive, so it's stuff like that.
I hate inclusivity.
Well, here's the thing, man, and it's ruined a lot of things, honestly. I mean, look at
Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue.
Exactly. What the best thing they had going for them, they've
the
ruined.
Only thing they had going for them.
Yeah, I don't. Apparently, Sports Illustrated people read still.
Dude,
I don't know.
When I was like
me.
14 years old, the front of Sports Illustrated was Christy Brinkley. If I'm 14 years old today, it's Caitlyn Jenner, and I'm freaking confused.
Yeah, I heard Caitlyn was supposed to pose nude for SI, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
so
they're probably got her hand over her whatever she's got now.
His
or
got his
you can't
hand.
say that because you're not woke then, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I honestly, I could really care less. I mean, but that's the thing is, you have more and more people like that where they're like, oh well, we've got to include the more normal people. Dude, I don't watch sports to be normal. I watch that because they're doing things I cannot do. I'm in awe of what they're able to accomplish. What the human.
I mean, let's see if you can do what Caitlyn Bruce did.
Nah, I got, I'm doing the family thing. I'm okay. I don't want to be a mother.
He had a family. He's got the Kardashians. He's got some well-raised, adjusted young ladies.
Oh, yes. Very astute.
A real part of their body left.
Very, very astute, articulate.
You're really good at marrying NBA players, though. I will give them that.
Yeah. One.
Gotta get paid.
You gotta get paid, baby.
But now they're worth so much money, don't they end up having to pay alimony to like Lamar Odom and stuff?
Yeah, you're probably paying for his addiction now, but I mean, Kim should be sending a text message or calling Ray J every day saying, "Man, I'm really glad we did that, put that on, put that out there." Because Ray J made that family. Well, he didn't make Jenner, but he made the Kardashians.
Have you ever tried sparkling ice, Jeremiah?
I don't know. I don't
It's
know. Are those?
carbonated water, and I mean, since they're not a sponsor, I'll just say it live on air. It tastes like shit. My son walked up and said, "Try this," and I remember when I was younger, if I would take something up to my dad and say, "Try this," it's because it was good, not because it tasted like ass.
Well, maybe that was intentional. Maybe he wanted you to taste a little ass.
Maybe it was intentional. All right. That's kind of like, the one time that my dad told me to go get him a beer, and I thought it'd be funny to shake it up and then take it to him.
Yeah.
It seems that in the end, that was not funny, and it was a really bad idea because I never did that again.
Yeah, dude, it's like I don't understand what the hell's going on with some of these people. They're like eating kale chips and drinking LaCroix water. I'm like,
hey, shut up! I eat kale, not kale chips. I actually juice kale. I don't eat meat. I'm a vegetarian. You'd never think I was a vegetarian, would you?
Well, no, but I already know that because I
But I
talked to you
was
outside.
a fat ass, so I'm not my whole life. It was just like a few months ago. I got on the scale and it said, "Get off me, you fat fuck."
It
And
just
then
said,
I
"Ow."
Hey.
It just said, "Ouch."
No, it said, "Get off me, you fat fuck." Because ouch is what it does if you weigh like 280, but if you weigh 290, it's like, "Get off me, you fat ass." So then I decided, hey, I'm going to die before I'm 60, and I'm 50 now if I keep eating like 4 to 5 steaks a week. So I figured, hey, I'll try something else so I could be on here and argue with John Einreinhofer forever. And see, my plan is to last long enough that, like, when I'm 90, we'll be doing this show, and I'll be bitching about all the kids that think that whoever the heavyweight champion of the world is at that time is as good as Deontay Wilder, or Anthony Joshua, or Tyson Fury ever were.
God, dude, man, I really hope that's not the case.
Of course, that means we'll have a bunch of one-legged, one-armed heavyweights boxing each other, but...
Well, maybe they'll add the woke model to boxing. They'll I don't know. They'll add some transitional characters and
transitional characters. That would have to be in women's boxing, right? That would be like if Deontay Wilder gets knocked out by Anthony Joshua, then he decides, really, I feel like a woman. So then he'll become Beyonce Wilder, the way a lot of people already call him, and then he can fight Clarissa Shields, the greatest woman fighter of all time.
I'm into it, man. Let's get it going. I mean, let's start this shit now, because
yeah. Because actually, Clarissa said she could whoop a man anyways, and if Deontay feels like a woman all of a sudden, it'll be a fair fight because you are what you think you are.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, we're to the point where we can just be whatever we want to be. I mean, it's all whatever you want to identify, and it's 2018 or 2019. Is that it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I'd like to identify as being 20, but that ain't gonna happen. All right, we're gonna wrap the show up because we went off the rails again, and we're 58 minutes in, and it seems like we do this show 24. So maybe I just have the 24/7 boxing talk show. We'll just talk continuously.
Yeah, or we can find somebody to fill the airtime while we, sleep and stuff.
Either that, or we could just sleep together on air because then we would be woke.
They're like, wow, we'll just call it art, and then we'll have some people tune in.
All right, guys, I want to bring this up. Tomorrow we will have an article up about our friend Alex Ramos, one of the greatest amateur boxers in amateur boxing history. I think he's reckoned with something like, 159 and 13 or something, like 132 knockouts, something like that. Read the article, it'll tell you.
You're like, I got it right there.
Uh-huh.
You're like, I got it right on the article.
Yeah, it's right on the article, but I don't know if it's right anywhere else, but not out of my lips. But it was something like that. He was a great fighter. He won a 4-time New York State Golden Gloves champion. Which I think is a bigger accomplishment than being the WBO champion of anything right now. So make sure you check the Alex Ramos article out tomorrow. Me and Jeremiah will be back at 11 o'clock tomorrow night. Alex Ramos will actually join us on air. I think the plan is Monday night on Inside Boxing Daily. Check out me and Steve Risley, noon tomorrow, where we will argue about things. And at the end, he'll admit that I'm right because I'm a lot more intelligent than him. And I'm really hoping he's listening right now, too, because I'm not talking behind your back, Steve. I'm talking to everybody, including you. All right. The Sheridan Report, 2 o'clock tomorrow. If you listen today, you would have got Bobby telling you to pick the underdog Toronto Raptors, take the points, and take them straight up, which I think was almost 3-1 odds. And Bobby nailed that today. So Bobby's very happy right now. You can tell because if you go follow B. Sheridan on Twitter, you'll notice that he's tweeting about everything. Happy as hell right now. So make sure you check that show out also. If you have any questions for us, I sounded like Deontay Wilder talking. But if you want to ask me a question, you can go ahead and send that question to the Grueling Truth on Twitter. Direct
Axe me
there.
at Grueling Truth.
Or you can axe me, at TGT in Boxing with Jeremiah, who hopefully is paying attention during the show because I might have missed a few questions tonight because I wasn't. I apologize, but that ship has sailed. Maybe the next time we'll talk about something similar and we'll talk about it again. And yes, to Ronald, I do think some Polish men can fight. That was during the Kownacki thing. Can they? Have we seen a really good Polish fighter? Thomas Adamek. How about that one?
Yeah, Adamek was a badass.
Yeah, he was a tough dude, especially at light heavyweight. Who was that he fought from Australia? Paul
Briggs.
Yeah, they fought 2 classic battles, especially the first fight was a great fight. All right. Also, make sure you rate us on iTunes. You can go to iTunes and actually pick up the Grueling Truth store app for free, which now, if you get the one with the new logo, you will have all of our written content, all of our podcasts. And as always, you can hear all of our podcasts on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.